What's up, everybody? Welcome inside the MRN studios here at NASCAR Productions in Concord, North Carolina. It is another edition of NASCAR Coast to Coast presented by Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. Whelen Engineering, and of course, we're going to break down all things NASCAR Regional as we are just ripping and rolling through the month of May. My name is Chris Wilner, MRN Pit Reporter, MRN announcer Kyle Rickey out in Connecticut. Kyle, it is rainy and dreary here. We've had all sorts of Mother Nature problems. It's a big week right here in the Carolinas. We just came off Darlington All-Star Weekend. We've got Darlington Throwback Weekend. We've got All-Star Weekend this weekend up at North Wileksboro. Cars Tour is supposed to be kicking that off hopefully today after being postponed. But, man, it's been a busy week, but also a busy week for you coming off the heels of finally getting through the Napa Spring Sizzler up there at Stafford. So how's it going?
Yeah, we dealt with the weather a couple of weeks ago and finally got the Napa Spring Sizzler in last Friday night, a race dominated by Ron Silk, a great crowd, a lot of great racing from not only the open modifieds with the Sizzler, but all five of our weekly divisions, a bizarre street stock finish, a crazy late model feature event, lap one, a great SK race from start to finish. I mean, all in all, a great way to open the Friday night season at the Stafford Motor Speedway. Mother Nature cooperated. Forecast said all week that she was not going to, but thankfully, as we got closer to Friday, it cleared up. So, and you made another good point. We are halfway through May. I feel like we were just talking 2 weeks ago that this was my favorite month of the year because it is the opening of so many racetracks and series around the country. And now suddenly, here we are, in almost into the second half of the month. Time flies this time of year, I feel like.
Certainly does. You blink and it's almost gone, but we've got so much more coming up, including a great show for you folks tuning in. Of course, North Wileksboro Speedway, all eyes will be on that this week. Cars Late Model Stocks and Pro Late Models doing a doubleheader as we record this show on Wednesday. We're going to go right to the racetrack later in segment 2 and talk to one of the drivers doing double duty this weekend in both the Cars Late Model Stock Tour and the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. That's Layne Riggs who'll be joining us as well. We're going to talk all things about Darlington and all the short track racing that's been going on across the United States, including ARCA East having a good one out there over the weekend, and also NASCAR Canada. Finally, this is that time of year, Kyle. We're going, where have they been? Everybody else is opening up and starting their seasons. NASCAR Canada, formerly Pinty Series, going to open up their season this weekend. We'll talk to the general manager of the series, Alan Labrosse, here coming up in segment number 3. But let's first, Kyle, get through the weekend that was quickly with ARCA East, the Music City 150 at Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. Williams Sawalich, we were kind of wondering what's going on. We had Connor Zilic. We had, some different drivers picking up victories, but Williams Sawalich says, don't forget about me. I'm the defending champ, and I went out and dominated this race, leading pretty much all but 5 or 6 laps of this one over the weekend. So back to form for Williams Sawalich this week with the ARCA East group.
Yeah, he put a whipping on him. I think, there were only 3 cars in the lead lap. He was just lapping the field left and right, long green flag runs. Wasn't able to get the pole. That's the only thing he didn't win. That went to Gio Ruggiero, but a dominant run by Williams Sawalich once again after, having some good runs at that racetrack over the last couple of seasons. Gets to victory lane here in the ARCA Menards East Series. And kudos to Ruggiero. Had a good run early on. And how about Isabella Robusto? She kind of made a big splash at the Phoenix Raceway back a couple of months ago and continues to have good runs, finishing in the second spot.
Yeah, she didn't even get to run this race last year. Remember, suffered that concussion at Hickory that knocked her out for most of the season. So really cool to see Isabella, who we had on the show about a month ago or so, having another good run with the ARCA platform. Luke Fenhouse, of course, won this race last year, so redemption for Williams Sawalich here this year. Connor Zilic finished that 3rd spot in a good battle with Isabella there late in the race. And Zachary Tinkle scoring his first top 5 finish in ARCA, coming home with the 4th position. So shake up in the points just a little bit with that top 5. Again, another top 5. I think it's 3 in a row for Connor Zilic. He takes over the points lead by 5 over Williams Sawalich as they get ready to go back to back here, going to Flat Rock this weekend on Saturday night. All right, let's go up to your neck of the woods, Kyle. Let's talk quickly about Napa Spring Sizzler. Of course, we talked. It's been a 2-week break in between the preliminary festivities and now the culmination of the Spring Sizzler. We had the SK modified feature as well, but the 100 lapper Spring Sizzler. I mean, you might as well call it the Ronnie Silk Sizzler because he sizzled the competition for pretty much most of that one, picking up his second straight victory in the big race.
Yeah, the last 2 years, he has figured something out in that 16 car and picked up $34,000 plus as the winner's purse on Friday night. So a great night for Ron Silk. He was the favorite going in. Won his Napa Auto Parts dual qualifying race a couple of weeks ago during the originally scheduled Spring Sizzler weekend. We knew he was going to be one of the teams to beat. He was fast in practice, dominated his duel, got out front early. One hiccup on pit road where he made a stop and some of the other lead lap cars did not. He got caught in some pretty heavy traffic with some of the slower cars that stayed on the racetrack during a mid-race restart, but fell back to ninth, quickly shot his way back to the front of the field. When he did that, we all knew there was probably going to be no stopping him. Led the most laps, got the lap money, got the win, and second in a row for the Napa Spring Sizzler and the greatest race in the history of spring for Ron Silk.
Absolutely, and he's been bagging the cash from Stafford as well. I think between last year's fall or 2022 fall final, last year's Spring Sizzler, and this, it's like well over $100,000 he's pocketed from Stafford. So sorry, Kyle. Hopefully that's not reflected in your paycheck as he's just stealing all your money out there. But congratulations to Ron Silk, that entire 16 team. It's been a great weekend for John McKennedy. Finished there in the second spot. Woody Pitcat, one of your local drivers, in the top 5 and third. Matt Swanson and, of course, Big Money Matt Hirschman rounding out the top 5. How about that SK Light feature, Kyle? Tyler Chapman? That was a pretty good one as well.
Was 36 cars took the green flag, and I'm not sure how they did it, but the first 10 or 11 laps went caution-free. It was only when the leaders got in lap traffic and some of those inexperienced drivers at the rear of the field kind of, darted one way when the leaders thought they were going the other, and contact was made, and that was the first caution of the event. But until that point, fairly clean for a huge field. The driver that has been, I don't want to say unstoppable, but has been a favorite the last couple of years, and Tyler Chapman was able to weave his way through some of that traffic and pick up the race win using some experience. I say it, he's only 18 years old, but he's been behind the wheel of a light now for a couple of seasons and was able to take the checkered flag, his first of the season. That division will run 2 races this week. They were rained out on Spring Sizzler Sunday, a couple laps shy of halfway, so they'll make up the resumption of that event to open up Friday night's race program and then run their regularly scheduled 20-lap feature.
Sounds good. Stafford Speedway off and running back to weekly programming coming up on Friday. Quick thoughts about Darlington, Kyle. I know you were probably tuned in a little bit from Stafford this weekend after running Spring Sizzler on Friday. We had a little bit of an up-and-down weekend, right? Truck Series, I think checkered flag was after midnight on Friday evening, but of course it was throwback weekend, celebrating the history of our sport and the roots that got us here. It was that was the theme, right? Everybody, at least a lot of drivers in the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series, paying a tribute to their racing roots or their mentors as they grew up. Did you have any favorites tuning into the broadcast or in listening on MRN to some of the throwback schemes? Could you pinpoint maybe a few that caught your eye?
I mean, it's hard to not like Kyle Larson's scheme from Sunday, the old Terry Labonte colors and Kellogg's.
And Terry was there in a full suit too. Did you see that?
He was, and I think he spent some time on the television broadcast during Stage 2 on Sunday's Goodyear 400. So love that car as a kid, love it now. It was fun to see it back. Parker Retzlaff's Harry Gant car was pretty cool. Obviously, High Groove Harry had so much success at the Darlington Raceway in both the NASCAR Cup Series and in the old NASCAR Busch Series back in the early 90s. I grew up watching that 33 car, and it was fun to see that scheme for Parker. And Ryan Preece, the Flamingo Racing car. We had him on the show last week. Former modified scheme, always gets my heart. So I'm glad Ryan had, somewhat decent run. It was good to see him late in that long run, just outside of the top 15. It looks like the Fords are finally starting to get it together. Stuart Haas Racing starting to finally, make some noise toward the front of the field. We saw that with Josh Berry having a career day in the top 5.
100%. Both he and Chase Briscoe in the top 5 for SHR was a big, big move on their part. I'm going to have to go with Brennan Poole's Kyle Petty throwback, the Hot Wheels. That was one of my first we've actually got examples of them. Little die casts. That was the first one I ever owned when I was a kid. I remember it was the first one in a series of hundreds of collections after that. So seeing that kind of Hot Wheels blue and orange and white machine was pretty cool. So kudos to Brennan Poole and that team for doing that in the Xfinity Series. Jack Wood, the Tim Flock 1952 throwback. I mean, that kind of got overlooked just a little bit. Jack Wood didn't really have as good of a run as maybe what he had hoped at Darlington, so it kind of got buried. But when that truck was flying around there, that was a stunner for sure. Of course, Corey Heim had a really good Tim Richmond throwback as well. And then I'm going to go, actually, instead of Larson, although that was probably everybody's favorite, and it is one of mine as well, Alex Bowman with the 2002 Jimmy Johnson. I mean, that was before he was 7-time. I remember that iconic Lowe's scheme. The whole crew had the old school Lowe's pit uniforms before putting their fire suits on. So kudos. I mean, Hendrick Motorsports just won the day when it came to throwback for sure. All 4 of their cars were absolutely stunning. So good stuff there. Xfinity Series, Kyle. We talked about Carson Kvapil, one of our NASCAR Roots drivers, had a streak of top 5s in his 2 series starts. Unfortunately, finished 19th over the weekend. But you have to come to expect that, right? Darlington, you can't just walk in there and go get a top 5. It's hard to do, especially as a first-timer.
Yeah, he's had good runs on the short tracks of the series, but moving into Darlington, they call it too tough to tame for a reason. Although, I mean, a fairly tame race on Saturday compared to some of the Xfinity Series events that we have seen there in the past. But, you still have to race the racetrack, whether the race has a lot of yellows or a long green flag run. You get to manage the tires. And I'm sure he took a lot of notes during the course of that 200-mile event, and he'll come back better prepared when the series goes back there.
For sure. Got to listen to him on the radio, and even his father, Travis, chimed in a few times, too, helping him run around the racetrack. So only going to get better with time, but good to see Carson Kvapil out there again this weekend. Justin Allgaier, too, as we close Darlington, picked up a win in the Xfinity Series, tying Junior Motorsports' 10th all-time in career wins. And, of course, former ARCA graduate, so there's your NASCAR Roots tie-in, but it was really cool to see Lil Gator get back in victory lane, his first of the year. Some other winners this weekend. Cody Kelly won in the big late model race at Florence. We know one of our colleagues, Steve Post, made his trip down there. Postman 68 was on full attack mode, which I was shocked because we all were exhausted Saturday after that late night on Friday and then having to do the parade, but Steve Post went down there as well to Florence. Photo finish at Mobile. Brendan Kitchen holding off Chris Mitchell in a Crown Stock thriller. That was the first time I've ever seen the replay of the Crown Stock race out there at Mobile, but boy, they put on a good show as well. And then Kyle, a couple names that we're accustomed to seeing, but first time, I believe, this year, Peyton Sellers found victory lane, sweeping out the races at South Boston, and Connor Hall, again, doing Connor Hall things, sweeping races at Langley. So some names that we're accustomed to seeing getting back into victory lane as well. And then the big news before we get to our first guest of 2 here on this show, Kyle, is that in-season tournament. NASCAR announced this week that next year, as a part of its TNT broadcast window, which is 5 races, it's going to be an in-season bracket-style tournament. 32 drivers going head-to-head. The winner that week moves on. The champion, after all 5 races, will win $1 million. No points, no playoff positions, just money. What are your thoughts? Going a little bit kind of March Madness style a little bit here when we get to the summer months in 2025.
So you're saying Denny Hamlin's idea from last year was a good one?
I mean, I said so on my social channels. A lot of people followed up with that, and I think if you're going to look at a guy that would probably succeed and thrive in this element, I would say Denny Hamlin. So yeah, good job, Denny.
I like it. It's going to be a race or a lot of races in one single event. I think it's going to be for those that like to put money down on these races. It's going to be a dream for them because there's going to be a lot of different options as far as betting is concerned. So just another element of as that world begins and continues to evolve here in NASCAR. The $1 million prize. Whatever. It's $1 million for a lot of these teams. That's, a half a race weekend. It's still a lot of money, no doubt. For me and you, it would be, life changing. But, $1 million now isn't $1 million like in 1992 when we saw it awarded for the first time. Much different value there, but it's cool. It's a benefit. I heard Dale Earnhardt Jr. earlier this week say he'd like to see the winner of this bracket challenge have something go toward maybe the playoffs later in the year, which I think would be a bit more exciting than the check at the end of the event. But we'll see, and look forward to seeing how it plays out. Especially with, and how our new media partners that are coming into the sport, are able to make this an exciting part of their broadcasts for next summer.
Absolutely. And I think, too, it just gives you another storyline to follow. Sometimes we get to the doldrums of the midsummer and we get to some races where, things maybe aren't shaping up storyline-wise, although I feel like ever since we unleashed this Gen 7 car, there's always something to talk about. But at the same time, I understand the storyline approach, the bragging rights. These race car drivers, money's great. They just want to beat the other guy, right? And if you're Denny Hamlin and you're going toe-to-toe with, a Ryan Blaney, you don't care that it's going to be, you're not going to win anything necessarily in that race. You're just going to move on. You want to send the other guy packing. So there's a lot of bragging rights on the line. They are going to set up the seedings for those 32 drivers in the 3 previous races that'll be on Amazon Prime. And, of course, that'll be all the details released, sometime later this year. So interesting. Bracket-style racing, a little in-season tournament coming to NASCAR in 2025. Okay, enough rambling. Let's get to some race previews, and we'll start with Layne Riggs. He's on the other side of this break, directly from North Wileksboro Speedway. We'll talk all things late model stock and his truck series season coming up next here on NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. Whelen Engineering.
Whelen Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Whelen products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering. Joining us on the phone directly from North Wileksboro Speedway as the Cars Tour gets ready for a doubleheader on this Wednesday afternoon. It is Layne Riggs, of course, in the Truck Series, driving the Front Row Motorsports 38 Ford F-150. Layne, first of all, appreciate you taking the time. I know it's a little bit hectic up there as we get ready for practice, but where did the idea get started to go back and run this race at North Wileksboro in your late model roots, especially now with your full-time truck commitment?
Yeah, I'm still trying to stay in touch with my late model roots. Ran a couple of Car Tour races this year already, and what perfect place to do it than North Wileksboro. It's going to be a huge event. I hate that the rain's impeding it, but also the only track really besides Martinsville that the late models actually race at, and just a couple of days before the truck race itself. So perfect learning experience. I know a couple of the guys that are running the truck race and the Cup race are even going to be here today. So perfect time to be here and get back to my roots. And I'm super thankful for the opportunity. Tom Usher Racing and RNS Race Cars for giving me a car to drive, kind of a last-minute deal coming together, and one that I would have never anticipated. But during the test, when I got to run a couple laps in that car, it was super fast, and looking forward to today. Hopefully we get to all have a little bit of practice and qualify and race like normal. Hopefully we don't have to start on points or anything special like that.
Yeah, I saw it was a last-minute deal that came together just in the last couple of days. How nerve-wracking is that, and how special is it, going back to your family that has driven for this team for several generations?
Yeah, it's good. It's refreshing. It's great to have all my old late model guys here at the track helping, and it's just a little bit of a flashback just to a couple of years ago that feels like an eternity. So it's definitely when you were doing it, you take it for granted, but now coming back, just seeing everybody here at the track and all the jokes and old inside jokes still are there. So it's a really good time. It's enjoyable, and it's definitely exactly where I came from. Never going to miss it, and always going to be there right for it.
Well, I know you haven't hit the racetrack yet here this week for practice, and we're hopefully expecting that to be here pretty soon. But what are your expectations with this new repave at North Wileksboro Speedway? Luckily, you guys are going to be the first really to see what it's like this week with the conditions that we have before we go truck racing on Saturday and practice on Friday. So what are your expectations, at least as far as what you've learned in those few laps you've had, and just by talking to folks, especially some of the truck series drivers that took part in that test here about a month and a half ago?
Yeah, I was able to be here at the test myself, which was great learning experience, and the track was a lot smoother than I thought it was going to be. Sure, it had a couple character bumps here and there, and which I think is always good for a racetrack to have. Being a piece of glass is not always the best. So, I was surprised with how racy it was in practice. The pro late models having a spool rear end, they were running all the way. They got within about a car width from the outside wall in 1 and 2 in practice, and that's where everybody was running their fast lap set. So. And then down there in 3 and 4, you're back on the bottom again. So it looks like it's going to be racy. Both ends of the track, you have to run a completely different line and mentality. So you go into turn 1, you open the bottom up, let somebody get inside of you, then you got to race them back down into turn 3 because the bottom's preferred down there. So I think it'll be good. It's going to be hard-nosed racing all night. There's not going to be really any tire fall off because, the track's just, the asphalt's so fine and smooth and grippy. So it's going to be a lot of hard-nosed racing. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of tire smoke, and hopefully the fans stay excited from lap 1 to the checkered flag.
Do you anticipate having to make any changes because it is now a single-day show with both the divisions out there on the same day?
No, I think it's going to be the same as normal. The track is so new; it doesn't really, swing that large and balance change. Nobody really knows what it's going to do when it comes to nighttime. Nobody's running at night yet, so I think it's all just going to be a shot in the dark. And look at it like these other high grip, freshly paved tracks we go to: South Boston, Dominion Speedway, places like that, Tri-County Speedway. It's the same kind of asphalt they run there, just a lot bigger. So just treat it like one of those races and make the same adjustments for it. But no, being a rain delay and everything happening today, we're going to treat it just the same as always.
Layne, extra seat time is always key for a race car driver, but for North Wileksboro in particular, how important is just getting laps today, hopefully today, before your full-time job with the Truck Series later on this week?
Yeah, it's really big just because we don't have any simulation for Wilkesboro. At least to my knowledge, all the manufacturers came together at the beginning of the year and kind of agreed to not scan the new track here just because only the All-Star race for the Cup and just the trucks racing here. They didn't want to spend too much money in research development on this track, which I'm fine with, as long as everybody's in the same boat. So, getting in-person, real-life laps is a lot more important because there is no simulation laps to run. So, even for the truck stuff, we only have 50 minutes of practice. It's going to be a shot in the dark for everybody on setup. I think everybody's just going to come close to what our Martinsville setup is and adjust it off of there. So, definitely racing here and being able to be up to speed on the first lap in practice in the Truck Series is going to be super important, even though there's such different disciplines, being a radial versus a bias ply. Just understanding the characteristics of the track is super important.
9 races into the Truck Series season, how would you kind of sum it up? What are some of the biggest hurdles that have been for you that you're trying to overcome here as the season rolls on beginning this week?
We've had something different go wrong every race so far. It's been a tough season, but I finally feel like the past couple weeks something changed, something clicked, and we really got the ball rolling. We had a really strong performance at Darlington. I think we're going to finish right there in the top 5. Ross Chastain that won the race, we ran in front of all night long. There's a lot of factors that come into it. You got to have good pit crew, which we were actually second fastest on pit road all day, which I was very proud of those guys. Means a lot in the Truck Series. You can't overcome bad pit stops. Truck was fast. I did my job on the racetrack. We just got caught up in somebody else's mess. So, I was proud of it. And just keep having races like that with some luck on our side, I think we'll be in victory lane before long.
I was going to say the speed is there, so how critical is it now that we're at a place like North Wileksboro, which is right in your wheelhouse when it comes to short track racing, to maybe flip that script and finally put a result on the board before we go to Charlotte here in 2 weeks?
Hopefully it comes easy. Hopefully we go out here and on the truck and qualify on the pole and lead every lap and win the race. That's the goal everywhere we go. But, hopefully just being in a short track, being somewhere that I race hopefully today is going to be something that comes natural to me, and we can really show all of our skills.
Final question for you. Looking ahead to the Truck Series schedule, is there a facility that you have circled that you're looking forward to getting to, whether it be a racetrack that you have experience on or a place that you've never been to before that you've always wanted to run?
Yeah, I like St. Louis coming up here in a couple weeks. Totally different corners through 1 and 2 versus 3 and 4. I think we've even shifted down in 1 and 2 in race runs. So I'm excited for that. I was excited for Darlington last weekend. That place was super fun, which anywhere you go, you have a fast truck. It's always more fun than not. But yeah, North Wilkesboro here. Glad we already got to run Martinsville. I always hold Martinsville near dear to my heart. And going back to IRP, I've had a lot of success there. And hopefully with this team that I'm racing with full time now, and we can build some notes and go out there and pick up my first win.
All right, before we let you go, focus on the late model stock, just where we're at in the truck season and your first full, rookie season. Is there anything that surprised you as we sit just past the halfway point already in the regular season? Anything surprised you, just in terms of kind of what you've maybe were looking to expect when we started the season at Daytona to where we're at now?
Yeah, I think that obviously our results and stats are nowhere near what they deserve to be. I think we should be easily top 10 in points, and right now we're not even close to that. Just either getting in a wreck early or having a error on pit road or me making a mistake or something. We definitely should have been a lot better on the stats board. But the biggest thing I've learned is just it's a lot more factors that affect your race. This late model racing, when you go out on the racetrack and take the green, you're on your own out there. You have you and your spotter. You're not going to be coming in, making adjustments, making pit stops. There's a lot more factors in the truck and a lot more people and resources you have to rely on to be successful. And it's a hard pill to swallow when not all of them go right when it's out of your control. So, that's the good thing about the late models. Once you take the green flag, you can take the thing by the horns, and it's your race from there on out. You don't have to worry about anybody else besides the other racers on the track with you.
For sure. That's a really great point. Well, hey, we'll get back to it there at North Wilkesboro. Hopefully the rain holds off for you guys, and have a good run out there today. Maybe that'll set the tone for you guys here the rest of the week up there at North Wilkesboro.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. Hopefully we get to race tonight and put on a good show for everybody.
Sounds good. And, of course, we'll see you Friday there when you get ready for truck practice and qualifying. That's Layne Riggs, driver of the number 38 Ford F-150 for Front Row Motorsports, taking on North Wilkesboro Speedway in the late model stock for the Cars Tour. Coming up next, more guests, including a preview of the NASCAR Canada Series Open. That's coming up next year on NASCAR Coast to Coast, presented by Whelen Engineering.
Whelen Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Whelen products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast here on the Motor Racing Network. We go from the North Wilkesboro Speedway and late models to north of the border as the NASCAR Canada Series is set to go for its 2024 season. And we are joined now by Alan Labrosse, the NASCAR Canada General Manager. Alan, first off, thanks for joining us here this afternoon.
Hey, it's a pleasure being here. Thank you very much for having me.
13 races on the schedule. The first is coming up this weekend at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, fresh off a test there a couple of weeks ago. You excited about the new season ahead?
I'm excited, and I think that I'm not the only one. Obviously, fans are excited, and teams are excited. Drivers are excited. I'll give you the scoop right now because our press release should go out probably within the next hour, I would think. But we have 31 cars registered for this race, and that is the highest number of cars that we've had at a season opener. So, we've had 26, 27, 28, whatever, but 31. We've had this number of cars maybe at the Labor Day weekend at CTMP, which is also a big weekend. But as a season opener, hey, we got the wind in our sails, so things are looking very good.
So, Alan, why do you think that is? I mean, obviously, Kyle and I have just seen the popularity of this series continue to grow year after year. Broadcasting partners like Flow Racing give a lot of us in the States an opportunity to watch you guys week in and week out. But why now do you think the popularity is where it's at that we have this many cars for the season opener?
Oh, well, I mean, there's usually many answers to the why, but, I guess some things are being done right, are being done correctly. This series is very competitive and is now considered and perceived as the premier motorsports series in the country. We are truly the only national series. Like when I say there's a lot of good racing series, but one that goes to, from almost from coast to coast is and televised, nationally televised, and like you say, on Flow Racing. I don't have the exact answer why, but I'm just happy that we're there right now.
How important has that element been? We've mentioned it twice now. Flow Racing coming on board with NASCAR and their regional series, I believe 2 years ago. The NASCAR Canada series, very much a part of that. The series has always been on TSN up in Canada, a longtime media partner with you guys. But how important has that flow element been?
Well, it's probably important because it's the reach of an opportunity, actually, of reaching an audience that we were not reaching before. So I mean, obviously, south of the border, anybody south of the border that enjoys motorsports and like competitive racing, if they take the time and get an opportunity to watch the NASCAR Canada series, they'll see that it's rubbing and racing. It's exciting. It's the same as what you have in the U.S. when you have like a very competitive field, and that's what we have. I mean, we really truly have at least a third of the field, 10, 12 drivers that can actually win the race. So. It's nonstop, and so yes, the viewership and the reach that we're getting on Flow is hopefully contributing to the overall success.
A lot of excitement going into this season opener at CTMP, but when you look at the schedule, obviously last year we started at Sunset at CTMP. This year, what other kind of new elements should fans expect when they start tuning in to you guys this season?
Well, new elements. I'll go back on what you said about Sunset. It would have been nice to return there this year, and coincidentally, had we returned, I know that their opening weekend last weekend was rained out. So maybe it worked out okay that we didn't. We're not racing there this year, and we hope to be back. New elements. Well, we have a race at a new venue, two venues now. Like we're going back to Nova Scotia to Riverside in June, and that track is it's a similar, smaller Bristol is what it is, and so the teams love it, the fans love it. And we're glad to be back there. And we're going back there for a doubleheader, 2 races, one on the Saturday evening and the following day on the Sunday. We also finished the race at a venue that we know of, none of our drivers have been to, which is in Quebec. And that final will take place in September at Montmagny, which is I'm familiar with the place. It's a fast oval. Good 2-lane racing oval, so it's always entertaining there too. So, let's just hope that the sunshine is out this weekend at CTMP.
Yeah, fingers crossed, no doubt, with a healthy entry list. You talk about the schedule, 13 events this year. Prior to COVID, the NASCAR Canada, then the NASCAR Pinty Series made its annual stop to the New Hampshire Motor Speedway here in the States. And I know there's a lot of other short tracks north, close to the Canadian border that would like to host a series race. Is there any thought about maybe returning to the States here in the next couple of years?
Well, there's probably, there's always thought. We have a relatively short season, because where we're geographically located and so on and so forth. And we have, there's a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration before you're expanding a race calendar, going from now 13 to 14 or 15 or whatever, it's a fine line. So yes, I mean, hey, I've been to Loudon many a time, and I know that teams and drivers love the place. And now that we have a stronger field, I think we could make for it. It would make for a better show than what we had previously. But we're not there yet. But it's always on the radar.
And going along those lines too, I mean, if we get to that point, could you ever see maybe a cross weekend with NASCAR here in the States in terms of like a Watkins Glen weekend, or at New Hampshire with the Cup Series being there alongside you guys, or is that way too far in the future?
It's funny that you say that, because Watkins Glen is a place that I think that we could that the NASCAR Canada Series would like and would put on a hell of a show. And it's well located geographically too for the teams and so on and so forth. So I really find it coincidental that you mentioned that venue, because it's in here somewhere. And who knows? I mean, I would practically prefer going to Watkins Glen as opposed to returning to Loudon. So, and that's not to say anything negative about Loudon or anything like that. I just think that we would have a strong grid and a entertaining bunch of teams for that they've never seen in New York before.
I was introduced to the NASCAR Canada Series many, many years ago when the old Busch Series went to Montreal. Obviously saw them when the trucks went to Canadian Tire Motorsports Park for several seasons just outside Toronto. How important or would you like to see the national series of NASCAR here in the States go back north of the border and maybe have a couple of more of those combination weekends with NASCAR Canada?
Yes, I was there it was nationwide at the time.
Yep.
From 2008 to 2012 on Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, Montreal. And yes, the truck series Craftsman that was there at CTMP a couple of times. To answer your question, we would absolutely love to have a national American series return to Canada. Obviously, the height of that dream, I guess you could say, and maybe not dream, but the height of the goal would to see a cup race come to Canada. And hey, either a nationwide or a truck race. The answer is a definite yes. And anytime a higher level quality field, international competition goes to any country, it always elevates the light that is shined on the brand, on NASCAR, and on the racing. And so it's always a good thing. So we have our fingers crossed that in the near future, that somewhere, somehow, NASCAR National USA, or a national premier series returns to Canada.
I'm hoping so, too. I've had Montreal on my bucket list, and I was kind of hoping that at some point we get to cover a race up there as well, so maybe we can make that happen for sure. Before we let you go, let's just kind of get a little season preview here. Last year we had Trayton Lapcevich win, 7 races en route to the title. We had some really, really good finishes. You have perennial championship favorite LP Dumoulin. Who do you have your eyes on this year that fans should expect as we get set to go this weekend?
Well, the eyes are going to be on quite a few people. And there's a team that has just merged together. Now it's called Innovation Autosport, and their main car chief, or I don't know what his title is exactly, but he was formerly, up until last year, he was on the 23 Cup team.
Okay, 2311.
Working with Bubba. And so his name is Etienne Clich, and he was 10 years, I think, in the Cup Series. So he has a pretty valuable experience, and so he's working now on the Lacroix, the 74, and the 27 Ranger, who has moved under that tent, I guess you could say. So those two are going to be competitive. Obviously, the 96 that is Camira. Then DJ Kennington is always he's an old veteran there, but he's always in the thick of things. I can't put my finger on one single driver because and although, like you mentioned, Trayton had a great season last year. We've made some changes, like we as in NASCAR, we've made some changes, regulations with some parts and so on and so forth, which I think is the purpose of those changes is to actually try and level the field a little bit as far as the cars go. So I'm not sure if there's going to be a domination by one single driver in the 2024 season, which, you know what? I don't think we mind that at all.
And it all begins this weekend at the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. Alan, as always, thanks for joining us here on NASCAR Coast to Coast. Best of luck this weekend. Have a great season up there with NASCAR Canada.
Well, it was a pleasure talking with you, and we hope to be back. And I'll see you someplace, somewhere at a racetrack.
Look forward to it. Have a great season. That's Alan Labrosse, the NASCAR Canada General Manager, joining us here on NASCAR Coast to Coast. Back to wrap things up here in a moment.
Whelen Engineering, a global leader in the emergency warning industry, designs and manufactures reliable and powerful warning lights, white illumination lighting, sirens, controllers, and warning systems for the automotive, aviation, and mass notification industries worldwide. Whelen products are designed, sourced, and manufactured in America and tested on site to meet the toughest industry standards. Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. We never left, and we're here to stay.
Welcome back to NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering. Two really good conversations, Kyle Ricky, on both ends of the spectrum when we talk about short track racing and the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, of course, with Layne, and then with Alan, previewing this year's NASCAR Canada season. I'm pumped up to go watch Canada kick things off at CTMP, and a lot of drivers, as he said, to watch, but also some hints at maybe some get-togethers with NASCAR National Series possibly in the future. That was interesting.
Sounds like he wants to come to Watkins Glen, and I don't blame him. A NASCAR Canada race at Watkins Glen International would be spectacular. They were fun to watch at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway prior to the shutdown, and obviously when we went north of the border, I was able to watch them at the NASCAR Canadian Tire Motorsports Park and the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal. Fantastic series. The Canadian fans are so fun to be around. They get into it, especially during like driver intros when Andrew Ranger and DJ Kennington are introduced. They've had the same PA voice now for well over 20 years who travels the series and knows how to get the crowd excited and knows how to do a great job interacting with the drivers. So I can't wait to see what happens this weekend. 31 cars, a great field. 25 were at this test a couple of weeks ago. So going to be fun, and we can watch it on Flow Racing this Sunday.
That's right, and that kicks off our calendar look here at the week of short track and NASCAR regional racing. Of course, the CTMP race Sunday on Flow Racing, 18th season for NASCAR Canada, the newly branded NASCAR Canada Series. Trayton Lapcevich, as we talked about it with Alan, kind of maybe one of the favorites after an incredible season. But as Alan mentioned, some new changes to some of the rules and regulations, maybe limiting some things you could do with parts. So could maybe be a little more parity this year in the season. Marc-Antoine Cameron, Kevin Lacroix were very fast on that test day that Kyle mentioned at the beginning of that interview a couple of weeks ago. So it's anybody's ball game. And of course, that racetrack, Kyle, anytime, no matter if it's the trucks or NASCAR Canada, they put on a thrilling racing out there at CTMP, oftentimes ending with a little fender banging and door slamming there coming to the checkered flag.
Hold my watch.
Yeah.
A lot has happened at that racetrack over the years under the NASCAR banner. Has a little bit of everything, that long back straightaway where I feel like they go forever. You have the very technical sections through turns 1 through 7 with all the downhill and uphill elevation changes that happened during that trip around the racetrack, during that section of the track. So always fun to watch, whether it be the Pinty series or the trucks and maybe one day even some other series in NASCAR NASCAR may get to race there down the road. Time will tell.
Very true. Again, you can watch every lap of every race for the NASCAR Canada Series beginning this weekend on Flow Racing. Now back stateside, and we talked to Layne about it just for a brief moment before they started practice. Currently going on as we speak at North Wileksboro Speedway. It is the Cars Tour doubleheader after rain postponed Tuesday's Pro Late Model event. It is now Late Model Stock and Pro Late Model Night out at North Wileksboro Speedway. That's kicking off NASCAR All-Star Weekend. Repaved over the winter, Kyle, has been the biggest story. It's smooth but has character. That's how Layne described it, but it's fast. How much does that change, you think, the racing coming up this weekend?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of drivers that aren't used to going that fast on that short of a racetrack. Yeah. It's going to be a completely different racetrack from what they raced on there a year ago. They'll adapt. I mean, that's what these practice sessions are for. Hopefully, Mother Nature is cooperating with these teams so they can get the practice that they need, maybe put some rubber down on the surface and be ready to go for their main events later tonight. It's going to be a quick day, a condensed day. And both divisions going to share the racetrack here later on this evening. Going to be fun. And
a stacked lineup. I mean, obviously, Layne doing double duty. We have Corey Heim involved. Sammy Smith from the Xfinity Series going back to his late model roots. Of course, the former Winchester 400 winner in Sammy. You name it, they're there, and they're going to be there looking to win. Of course, with your regular Cars Tour favorites, the Quapples in both the Pro Late Model with Caden and Carson in the late model stock. Caden Honeycutt, I believe, is running double duty. Actually running both the late model stock and the pro late model. So stacked lineup. And then, of course, Brendan Butterbean Queen, who's going to do double duty, but for the first time make his Craftsman Truck Series debut with Tricon Garage on Friday night. A huge weekend for Brendan Butterbean Queen, but also a place that really launched him on the map last year, winning that Cars late model stock race in front of a packed house out there at North Wileksboro Speedway. It's hard to pick a favorite, Kyle, and of course, as we speak, they're going on, hopefully practicing and getting ready for tonight's festivities, so we'll see maybe who's going to be a favorite later on tonight, but who do you have your eyes on? Because the whole lineup sheet, I'm like, he could win, you go down the list.
Yeah, Butterbean, obviously, both tonight and Friday night. The NASCAR National Series world is going to be introduced to one of the great personalities of stock or late model stock car racing on the Cars Tour. So keep an eye out on him. I think he could be a star in this sport if all the stars align, and I think that alignment begins here this week at North Wileksboro.
Certainly does. Bobby McCarty, 14 behind Connor Hall in the late model stock points coming into this weekend. So the championship battle is brewing. And, of course, Carson Quapple, who had to miss a Cars Tour race due to his Xfinity Series commitments, is still in the hunt there as well. So that's kind of the championship battle. Spencer Davis and Caden Honeycutt, deadlock tied in the points coming into Wilkesboro for the Pro Late Model. So should be fun to watch. Of course, again, if you're tuning into this, it's already happened, hopefully, if Mother Nature cooperates, but we'll hopefully have a recap of that next week. ARCA Menard Series East, the Dutch Boy 150 at Flat Rock Speedway, going to one of their long-tenured short tracks out there, coming up this weekend, Saturday night, 7:50 Eastern on Flow Racing, 150 laps racing around Flat Rock, and Connor Zilich in that points battle with Williams Sawalich. Just 5 points separate those two, but Kyle, Flat Rock has been the house of Williams Sawalich, especially last year.
Dominated the race a year ago. I think he led every lap and route to the win. Looking for another healthy field 2 weeks in a row for East teams. I think they're quote longest run of the season, a relatively short East season. They're going to go back-to-back here on two great short tracks in the Midwest, and looking forward to Flat Rock this week.
Hopefully a few more cars, too. I know they had 18 this past weekend out there at Nashville. Flat Rock, maybe we'll see a few more. Entry list, still haven't seen one just yet as of this time this week, but I'm sure that'll be coming out later today. But otherwise, it's going to be a great battle. We know Gio Ruggiero will be involved with that, maybe Connor Zilich as well, so only time will tell. Again, that race this coming Saturday, 7:50 on Flow. And then the NASCAR Wheeling Modified Tour. It's been a minute since we talked about the Ground Pounders. Well, they're back in action at Riverhead for the Miller Lite Salutes Wayne Anderson 200 Saturday night, 8 o'clock on Flow. Of course, named after five-time track champ and former NASCAR Wheeling Modified Tour champion Wayne Anderson. Justin Bonsignor, another record opportunity for him. If he gets a win, he'll be the most winningest driver at that racetrack. But Kyle, I mean, it's him, Ron Silk, who's had good runs there, Austin Beers. The whole group is going to try to dethrone Justin Bonsignor here this weekend.
And 11 regular competitors from Riverhead Raceway have entered the event from their weekly modified division, including 5-time track champion Tom Rogers, former Islip 300 winner J.B. Fortin, some guy named Timmy Solomito, who has contended so long now on the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour, running there weekly and won there last Saturday night for their season opener. So it is going to be a stacked field, both with the Modified Tour regulars, the Riverhead regulars. It's been a while. I think it's been a while since we've seen a Riverhead regular get to victory lane, because like you mentioned, it's been for the most part Justin Bonsignor more times than not the last several seasons. So that'll be fun on Saturday night.
Don't forget Jake Johnson in the field with Old Blue coming off that win last time out. So plenty of stars to keep an eye on. Again, the first of 3 visits to Riverhead this year for the Tour. And some new initiatives, though, Kyle, going into this weekend. They're going to be in place beginning this weekend through the rest of the year. Tire allotment is going down to save teams money. Practice time is being shortened by 15 to 30 minutes to also condense the weekend. I don't think it's going to change a whole lot, but that tire allotment, though, when it comes to pit stops is going to be key, and also throughout the weekend, of course, with practice. But speaking of pit stops, you can only change 2 tires max per stop now, according to the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour rules at places that require pit stops. What are your thoughts quickly on those new initiatives set by the Tour?
Yeah, it's cost cutting for a lot of the teams, or for all the teams. But I think it was a request from a lot of the smaller teams, especially that want to be a part of the Tour but can't afford to be a part of the Tour. I think this is one measure of maybe a few we're going to see here over the course of the season to try and help those smaller teams out, get them back to where they can compete on the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour on a regular basis. And I think NASCAR also sees some of the other modified tours that have popped up here in New England the last 10 or so years that are attracting 30, 35, 40 cars per event. And the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour, no secret, the average car count has gone down to 20 to 25 cars. And at bull rings like Monadnock, Riverhead, Seekonk, that's more than enough. But you get to some of the bigger racetracks and, 20 cars may not be enough to put on a good show. So looking to get more cars, more teams involved on a regular basis. And we'll see how, these changes affect the next couple of weeks for some of the smaller teams.
Absolutely. Again, those go into effect this weekend at Riverhead. Some other races coming up this weekend. Pass Series at White Mountain. Stafford, of course, Friday night with your weekly series. Berlin Raceway has their weekly shows. Jennerstown, Langley, Bowman Gray, and much, much more. Again, a lot of those you can check out on the Flow Racing dial. Kyle, before we go, driver of the week. For this week, you had plenty to choose from yet again.
I got 2. Rick Martin at the Seekonk Speedway won opening day his 110th feature win at the Seekonk Speedway. He has been around a while, a longtime pro stock racer up here in New England at all the racetracks, and continues to put a whooping on the kids at the Seekonk Speedway, getting it done last Saturday night. And then Evan Shotko, the big winner at the Berlin Raceway, a stacked super late model field, held off one of the best in Joe Bush in race 1, came back after an invert in race 2 to get a top 5 finish. So I like Evan's chances at a track title. Also, big night coming up at Berlin this week, 80s night, my favorite decade. Love the music, love the fashion, and they're promoting all of that this Saturday night at Berlin. I wish Jeff Striegel was going to be there.
Yeah, I would have loved to see Jeff throw it back to some 80s fashion, but I thought yours was the 90s. Didn't you go to 90s Con a month ago?
I did. I'm an 80s, 90s child.
You're just an old soul. Well, old, I guess that's hard for me to say now, but I guess that is kind of old, I think, when you think about it. But no, good stuff. Yeah, 80s night at Berlin. That could be sneaky right up there with the Money in the Bank and Battle at Berlin.
There you go.
So, yeah, shout out to Jeff Striegel. All right, MRN is on the air. Of course, it is All-Star Weekend at North Wilkesboro Speedway. Yours truly will be down there with the MRN crew. beginning Friday. Of course, NASCAR Cup Series hits the track for practice for both the All-Star cars and the Open cars not locked into the All-Star race. And, of course, the Pit Crew Challenge, which is part of All-Star qualifying. It's that 3 laps with the pit stop. Pit Crew Challenge, a part of that. Fastest pit crew gets first pit selection. So some bragging rights and, of course, some big opportunities on the line for pit stall choosings. Saturday, Craftsman Truck Series, Layne Riggs and the group will be down there for the Wright Brand 250. That airtime at 1 p.m. on Saturday afternoon, followed by both the All-Star heat races, the 60-lap heat races to set the starting lineups. Of course, that'll be at 5 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. And then, of course, Sunday, NASCAR Live Race Day, 5 p.m. Get you set for the Open. And following that, the NASCAR All-Star Race down at North Wileksboro Speedway. Should be a packed house. You can listen live all weekend long right here on the Motor Racing Network. Kyle, final thoughts before we go.
Weather looks good up here in New England this weekend. Hopefully everybody else's weather, including North Wilkesboro, which looks a bit rough right now.
Yep.
Hopefully it improves in the next couple of days before NASCAR checks onto the property or checks into the property following the Cars Tour event, which will eventually take place.
Yeah, we've got that new option tire with the prime tire for the Cup Series. Well, that wet weather tire may come into effect this weekend. We'll see. If it's getting better, but boy, there's significant chances of rain throughout the weekend. So time will tell. But anyways, we thank you folks for tuning in here to NASCAR Coast to Coast, brought to you by Whelen Engineering, manufactured in America for over 70 years. Whelen Engineering on board here with Coast to Coast. For our producer, Pat Jaggers, and Kyle Rickey, my name is Chris Wilner. Thanks for tuning in. We will break it all down from North Wilkesboro and more next week. Have a good one.